Earth, teach me, a prayer in our hymnal, but originally from the Ute people, the West, the people who are heavily leaned on and exploited. As we draw from native sources, in particular indigenous sources, I reckon it's good to be mindful, of course, that we inhabit stolen land, more than one tribe, something I'm still learning about. And as I learn, well, I reckon that's how we can turn our own hearts away from all the cynicism that's everywhere, right, friend? This whole goddamn world feels like it's telling us to be cynical. And we could do that, but I reckon there's just as much in this world telling us to appreciate beauty and to turn back towards something more real, more organic, more grounded. Now, I've been playing music basically my entire life. I'm pretty sure you have too, right? Yeah, basically. It's a thing. It kind of gets in your bones. You get the bug. You really can't get it out of you. And I encourage more of that. I reckon we're all musical creatures, friends. Each and every single one of us, whether or not we feel that we are talented or not, well, that's for later in the service. I first started playing music when I was around, I guess, 6 or 7 years old, and I joined the elementary school choir without my mom's permission. And next thing you know, I'm going to the library to sing with my classmates. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And my papa encouraged me. My whole family was rather artistic for being simple country people. My papa, with his Sears guitar he purchased from a catalog like when he was 15 years old. Gosh, I wonder how much the thing's worth now. Probably a good bit. But music was magic, right? It was pure magic. It was this connective force with family and my culture in Appalachia. And I was really encouraged to pursue it. And so I did. I did, and I loved it. And believe it or not, the first instrument I picked up wasn't a guitar, and it wasn't a mandolin, it wasn't a banjo, it was an ocarina. Anybody who's familiar with Legend of Zelda will know that it's a little clay flute thing. And yeah, it was like the 90s, and this video game came out, and I was in love with it. And I had this little clay flute I would take everywhere. And while it never did anything particularly magical, like change time or open doors, it did open doors for me in connecting with other people. I don't think I would be here with you all today if it weren't for the gift of music my family gave me. And I played this little flute, and I discovered the mandolin, and I saved up lawnmower money and bought myself a mandolin from Walmart. Believe it or not, you used to be able to go to a Walmart and spend $50 and get a pretty bad mandolin, honestly, but it lasted me for a while. And it just enchanted me and saturated my experience with that sense of being held in this thing that's bigger than me, this culture of music, this culture of sound. And being where I was in the world, you think the cicadas are loud here, and they are. But that pulse of life is palpable in the summer months in the Tennessee Valley. And so when I got out of high school and I went in the Army, and I got out of the Army, I didn't like that. I went to college, as you do. And I didn't really know what I wanted to study. But all my friends who I'd played music with, they were all going into music, and I'm like, well, I'll go study music as well. And I did, and I loved it. Music took me all over the place. Brazil, France. Music just became this beacon for my own heart. And yet at the same time, learning the structure and the theory of music kind of changed my relationship with it. It broke it in a way. There's this reductive approach to music theory, and if you do it long enough and without the right, headspace, you might begin to think of it like math, the machinery. And so I became very obsessed with the idea of making better songs, using this theory to ramshackle something perfect together. And we know what we think about perfection here, right, friends? It's not about perfection. It is about connection. This isn't something I had learned when I was in my early 20s studying music at this little community college. And while I'll never be sad or sorry for that time, it did change my relationship to music for a good long while. Because I wanted to be good, right? You want to be good. Rather than being able to tap into that raw musicality that is just part of our animal condition, the songs of birds and whales and a cat meowing. This world exalts in sound, and I couldn't hear it anymore. And when I went to seminary, I was introduced to a profound idea, typically used when we're talking about theology, but I think theology is everywhere, right? It's all storytelling, myth-making. And so this idea of second naivete is a sort of rediscovery of an old symbol, a story, what meanings may be laden in there, what maybe we might have passed over. And I took that idea and I played with it a lot in seminary. You know, I tried Christianity back on again. It didn't really work for me. I tried a lot of things as we're encouraged to pursue and explore and deepen our relationship with mystery. But as I was preparing this worship service, I was thinking about this idea of second naivete, and I was out walking my dog and I heard the cicadas. You know it, that sound, song of nature. And this pulse in the air that would come and go, fade in and out as the sun began to dip and the sky turned purple. I thought to myself, wow, you know, really, in a tangible way, this world really does exalt in sound. There is a magic that remains with music, whether it is good or bad, whether it comes from 6 strings and fingers picking, or it comes from the membrane of a bug being beaten by wings to signal it's time to do the making more bugs thing. But it's everywhere, friends. It's absolutely everywhere. If there's something in your life that is turned, that maybe you were infatuated with as a young person, but the drive of this world, the call is to be cynical, to look at our gifts and what has brought us joy as being just mundane. No. There's a quote that has been living rent-free in my head for well over a year now, and nobody knows who it's attributed to, but there is another world. There is another world. It's not necessarily a heaven above or a hell below. There is another world, friends, and it's right underneath your nose, closer than your own breath, than the sound of your own heartbeat that you can hear in a very quiet room. It's the music of this earth calling us to turn back, not turn away from the future or progress or the world or the way in which we live, but to turn our attention back towards the mother. And I don't mean that in a necessarily wooey way. I mean in a literal way that Jim is right. We are the earth. In a more than superficial way, we are an expression of this planet. This whole big wet rock falling around a fireball. You might even think of us as some emergence of the creative potentialities of the planet, but whatever that feels like for you, I'd like you to hold on to that idea through this worship service and consider that though you can jump off the ground, though you may not be intimately rooted to the planet like our friends the trees are, we are still of this earth, like a dandelion seed, caught on the wind and away and out. Still, we know this is an expression of the planet. Consider your own mineralness, your own relationship, distant as it is to the vegetation of the planet, to all the more than human beings that we are simply cousins with, and to each and every one of us, 99% genetically similar. We are this earth, friends. May we speak. Well, I'll make this fast, friends. I promise. Spoke a little bit too much during my first reflection, but in brief, I mentioned that music is everywhere. It's an intrinsic part of our lives, true. It can be hard to imagine a world without music, especially if you are a musician. It's been used to communicate and coordinate over thousands of years. We talked briefly about whales and birds, of course, the obvious ones. Bats also, frequently defined by their use of musical patterns to attract mates, deter rivals, or to define who they are. From lullabies, y'all, to hip-hop. We all have an affinity for music, and we benefit from the way it enriches our lives. So where does it begin? Well, the very short answer to that is it begins with animals. It might be strange to think of a more than human animal as being musical in the way we think about music, but we have to be careful with the way we use that word. We evolved along a line of primates, but totally divergent lines with whales and birds, yes. They have music, friends, a vocal memory. Prairie dogs are also a great example of a kind of creature native to Nebraska. I believe, are there prairie dogs here? Awesome. I love prairie dogs. They're so cute. They chatter and chirp to tell one another about predators incoming. Music is ingrained in the animalness of this planet. But like I said, we have to be careful with that word music. Outside the West, across the world, cultures don't use one single word to define all the very complex things that music does. Somewhere along the line, music crystallizes out of many different things, essentially a kind of organized sound. And if you look at how vervet monkeys use their calls of vocalization, they use an alarm call to signal different kinds of predators, like prairie dogs. So a different call would alert their colleagues that there's a snake, or there's a leopard. Another might say that there's an eagle. And these sounds are functions, they do something. They're not exactly a language because there's no syntax. They can't combine different calls to make a more complex call as we use language to do, as I'm doing right now. But what song does is it plays with sound and uproots these sounds from having any function. So gradually, primates and hominids, creatures like us, start to take vocalizations and enjoy them for pleasure. And this happens once the larynx, our vocal organ, starts to descend and enables our ancestors to make a very far rich variety of sounds. So music as an art form means that we enjoy sound for sound's own sake. It doesn't have an obvious or a direct function in what happens when the variety of sounds exceeds the function of sounds. Now, the second step happens when you start to create tools like flutes, drums. Why is that important? Well, the first bone flutes 40,000 years ago were revolutionary because with a tool, you abstract notes from the voice being the most natural organ, most musical natural organ. A flute is not. It's a piece of technology. But language could also be thought of as a kind of technology. It is a place where the intersection of tool use meshes with the emotional breadth and depth of the human being. It's extraordinary, bringing these two different places in the brain together. Now, Neanderthals, who likely existed before Homo sapiens, could not do this. This is an innovation of the human being to make tools that don't have an obvious function outside of their musicality. Right. Music evolved alongside of us. It is a part of our creatureness, in the same way that language is, in the same way that walking upright can be for those of us who walk upright. We haven't lost these parts of our brains, friends. Our brain is a palimpsest or a multi-layered sandwich, right? We still have the brainstem, we still have the reptile brain, the amygdala, the mammal brain. We have all these pieces, they all work together for the emergent reality of being a human being. I invite our neuroscientist friends to correct me in anything I get wrong. But what's remarkable about music is that it engages all of these pieces of our brain. So if you hear a shock or a bang, that trips this startle reflex, this, I dare say, reptilian part of our brain, this very primal part that just wakes us up. This is common throughout many species. I won't say if you clap your hands by a lizard and it runs away. Well, that's kind of a jerk thing to do. But it does stir something in this creature. We respond to sound from bottom up, from all the interrelationships of life, friends, that we respond to vibrations in our environment, to our environment as a whole. It informs our behavior. Now, I'm going to go off script here and get through this real quick. Music, as I've mentioned, has been important to me. It's clearly important to us as musicians. Music is more than just this commercialized product. It's the very heart and soul of the human condition. Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, know that that idea is a modern concept made to help you buy things. I studied music business a little bit in college, and while I appreciate when I was a musician getting paid for my work, as I'm sure all working musicians do, what that has done in some ways is separate the human from the song. It's taken us away from our inherent birthright as creatives, as musical creatures. So friends, I encourage you to pursue song where you can, to let it ring in your heart and in your head, to sing even if you don't think you're good, it doesn't matter. And I'll invite you all up to join us on Thursdays at 6 here, to sing with us on the choir and to learn some new songs. You don't have to be good. You can bring your guitar or whatever. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to play. We'll figure it out together. Because music is more than this highbrowed thing that has to be perfect, friends. It is evocative. It is evocative. And in a time like this, when so much is at risk and so much is at stake, Well, song can be transformative. Protest songs, friends, with their rhythm and their pulse. We humans aren't the only creatures who value rhythm and pulse. We spoke of cicadas. We can speak of whale songs. We can speak of all other manner of creatures which rely upon the rhythm of the seasons, rhythm of their own spark, their own voice to move and to navigate and to inform others of their species. Rhythm is important to us too, friends, and right now the rhythm of this planet is being disrupted. Now, dissonance is a part of things like jazz or bossa nova, because we're about to play some in a minute, but dissonance is a part of the flow and rhythm of life. But dissonance without resolution is just racket. It becomes noise. I can't promise or tell you what the chord of resolution from the sour note of our times is going to be, but I know that we sing it together. Talented, untalented, what do those words mean? Musician, non-musician, we're all inheritors of the creative spark of this planet. Music isn't some plastic thing. It's a thing you do. So may our lives be as a song.